morning and welcome. You're tuned in and listening to Sharona Unfiltered. This is episode 8. My, does time fly? I have to give a big shout out to everyone for all the support, for all the great guests who have willingly donated their time. Joined today by Lisa London. I'm so excited to have her on the show. And we've got two great guests today. We're going to be talking NBA playoffs with Jonas Pope. We're also going to talk some NFL draft. Hopefully the draft will get here soon. The draft talk has become rather monotonous, rather repetitive. We're going to talk some NFL draft and Dallas Cowboys with Patrick Kahn of Draft Cowboys. Excited. My first time talking to Patrick. We've had many Twitter conversations. So a great show today. It's too bad it's such a slow day in the sports world. We're going to talk about the Boko Haram abductions. It's a story that's close to my heart, very much underreported. I wonder where the world outrage is on that. But we have to start with the big verdict this morning, the Aaron Hernandez trial. But before we do that, I want to bring my special co-host, Lisa, in. I've got some great bumper music for her, of course. So here we go. We'll be back in about 30 seconds. All right, Lisa, I had to set you up with something good. We are going to turn this mother out. We're going to have some fun this morning.
That was some great bumper music. And more importantly, it wasn't the hold music from Blog Talk Radio. Wow.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we have to dress it up a little bit. I take pride in my bumper music. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to actually talk to Lisa. What kind of music do you like, Lisa?
I actually listen to a great deal of different types of music. So anything from jazz to rap to rock to bluegrass. I actually
a woman after my own heart. Oh my goodness, we're gonna have some fun. See, if I've known that you like bluegrass, I like some bluegrass. Do you like the Indigo Girls?
I do. I
almost set you up with some of that. Okay, so see, we're gonna. I hope that you'll have fun today and that you'll agree to come back on because next time I'm definitely going to up my game on the bumper music.
Well,
the big news today.
I love me some funk too. So.
Do ya? All right.
Oh yeah.
See, you are a girl. You are.
I've actually seen Parliament 3 or 4 times in concert.
No way! I love Parliament.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the first concerts that I saw as a youngster was Kool and the Gang, and I still have. Yeah, I still have very fond memories of that. I think it was actually Kool and the Gang and the Daz Band performing together. So that was fantastic. That was so great. I really enjoyed that. I love going to concerts, and we have a great place to go see concerts here in the Nashville area in the Ryman Auditorium. I need to up my concert-going game again. I've been working too hard, been doing too much, but we'll get that figured out. But big news this morning, the Aaron Hernandez verdict came down. He was found guilty on all accounts. Did you follow the trial very closely?
You know, I paid some attention to it, but this was one of those where if they come back with not guilty, I would have been really surprised. It was one of those that just did not look good for him. So I was like, I'll pay attention as they bring some stuff in, but I wasn't going to go through and follow each detail of a trial that seemed like, well, got the gun.
Yeah. You know, it lasted about a month, roughly about a month. As these big trials do, they tend to go on, you know, for a long time. I watched some of the trial. I didn't have any desire to watch every single minute of it, but I kept up with it, you know, some, and tuned in, of course, for the verdict this morning. And I thought that the judge, from what I did see, I thought that the judge was very, very careful in how she controlled the trial and in her rulings. I felt like she was very I shouldn't say very. I think that she leaned to be defense minded, defense oriented, which I'm not. Is not a listen. One of the jobs that a judge has to constantly keep in the back of her mind is the appeal process, because
right. Well, that I mean, in a case like that, you know Aaron Hernandez is going to be taking an appeal from whatever verdict, and you know everything that you do is going to be under a much higher scrutiny in a situation like that. So I would imagine that sitting as a judge on a trial like that versus, I mean, sometimes when we go into court or I go into court, it's a little more casual, and there's things that would happen that would not necessarily happen in something when you have the entire world's eyes upon you, because you don't have that leeway. You don't have that wiggle room anymore when every move you have is going to have a book written about it later.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do you have a legal background?
I'm a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
The lead dog law is that I am at lead dog law.
I'm a recovering lawyer. So we have that in common too.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do I recover from this?
Yeah, now you have to come back on. We have to talk about some legal stuff. But yeah, it was very interesting. He's obviously going to appeal. From my perspective, I didn't watch every single minute of the trial, but I did feel like the judge in her rulings very much made this verdict appeal proof. And when I say appeal proof, obviously he's got the right to appeal. I do not feel that there will be much basis for this conviction to be overturned. And he was found guilty on all counts. That's pretty telling in my opinion. So, but I want to talk about the Boko. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the defense definitely had they had their work cut out for them in this case. I mean, this was just one of those cases where you had to pull out a miracle on this one to try and pull the defense. I mean, it was just they just had a hard case, and I imagine that it's going to be shot down very quickly on appeal.
Yeah, the more interesting aspect of this was that the gun was never, the actual murder weapon was never found. But the prosecution did a good job with everybody.
Everything else.
And I know you know this. I know you know this, Lisa, as an attorney. Everybody wants to talk about circumstantial evidence. People are convicted. People pay money every day based on jury verdicts that are entirely based on circumstantial evidence. So I was always like, that's not as big a deal as I think people seem to think that it is. But I thought that the prosecution, I always said that putting together a trial, especially a jury trial, consisted of taking all kinds of little pieces and putting them together into a puzzle that made a picture for the jury. And most good trial attorneys are great storytellers.
Right. And you're basically building a foundation. So even though you have that gun sitting out there, you still have everything else that you've built together to put this case. So the gun may never show, but you still have that wall built. That is the key to, and keeping your jury keeping the jury engaged, which this trial did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely a part of it too. And the fiance, Shauna Jenkins, she was key. Her testimony was always going to be key, and I thought that she came across very well in what I saw.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to talk about. Obviously, we talk sports here. This is a big sports show. We're going to actually have two guests as opposed to just one, and really talk about sports. But we don't talk about sports a lot here. If you want, a show that I help host where we talk a lot of sports, definitely tune in to Friday for Game Over with Asta and Sharona. here we like to talk about a lot of different things. On Monday we talked to our big topic of conversation was Hillary, and I definitely want to get Lisa's opinion on that. But the big thing that I want to talk about this morning, yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the abductions in Nigeria, Boko Haram, by informal count, because obviously it's hard. Boko Haram is a terrorist group. It's an Islamic terrorist group. I hate to use that term because I do think that Islam gets very much a bad rap in the media and in public perception and public opinion. But that's what people, that's the terminology that people use. But they have abducted a lot of people, primarily young women. But yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of one of the biggest, and I suppose maybe the latest, although with the lack of media coverage, I don't know that we know. But according to reports, there have been about 2,000 abductions, primarily young women, to their cause and to their army. These women are being forced to do horrible things. Women are being forced into marriage. At times they become impregnated. The babies that are carried to term sometimes are cooked and eaten by the men in this group, this terrorist group, in front of these young women. And it's an outrage, and it's terrible. And I wonder where the media coverage is. I wonder where the outrage is. I always, when bad things are happening to women, I always wonder where the public outrage is.
It's a good question. I mean, one of the victims of war traditionally has been, unfortunately, women and young girls throughout the ages. It's a weapon of war, so to speak. But from the Free Your Girls, from the 200, I just saw recently on Al Jazeera that they're up to they're over 2,000 now. Mm-hmm. So not only have they not found the original women, they're actually regularly kidnapping more, some of which, some are being married off, some obviously horrible things are happening to them. Some of them are being forced in and conscripted as soldiers and sexually assaulted at the same time. What's happening is terrible. Schoolgirls are being taken and tortured, and we're ignoring it. And I don't know if it's a question of it's horrible and we can't do anything, so now we just don't want to hear about it, or if it's that it just doesn't make the ratings, so the news media is going to go focus on something that will. So whether it's whatever Miley Cyrus has done now and whoever's haircut it is.
Madonna shoving her tongue down Drake's throat, and we talked about that on the show on Monday. But, and we're going to talk about draft narrative, too, which ties into this whole conversation. I think that, unfortunately, these abductions and some of the draft narrative ties into a larger theme, and that is these are women's issues, and they're not issues that the world needs to be terribly concerned about, or that men need to be terribly concerned about. And that's offensive to me on a lot of levels. I think that unfortunately women still occupy this second-class citizenry. I'm going to try to get that out. But you know what I'm saying, Lisa. This whole notion that women are still second-class citizens in not just the United States, but in the world in general, I think is still alive and well and kicking.
No, absolutely. You see it in pretty much any time an issue comes up where there's sexual violence or domestic violence. Oftentimes you go to blaming the victim and examining as a woman. And then if you had anytime I have any questions as to where women are in the state of the world or where we are as a society in the state of the world, I always like to look at the comment section on any given news article. and that reminds you exactly where we really truly are. Because once that anonymity is added, then you can really see how a portion of the population still feels. And some of the comments, I know this is something that happened, a while back, but was it Kurt Schilling with his daughter? I mean, the things that were said, and it was great to see that finally, the stalking, harassing a woman, there was some consequences. But look how it had to happen. It took Kurt Schilling to actually have some consequences to what is happening regularly. And anything, when it comes to involving women, it turns into take a joke. It's just a joke. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
It's the woman's fault.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's still people that hold that attitude. That's not everybody. That's not, I mean, there's such a change in our society from what it used to be, and we're still seeing that evolution. And professionally, I mean, as a lawyer, you have to have seen the same change, difference between generations. I mean, we really are changing as a society, but it's still there.
We are,
and it's still an undercurrent that needs to be addressed. I mean, it's good that we can now publicly have this conversation, and we're talking about it. But there's still people that it falls on deaf ears, that they're like, "You're just causing trouble." It's just we stop complaining about it, and that's it. It is a problem But I think hopefully as we get into newer generations, attitudes are changing.
Yeah. I agree with what you just said, and I want to remind everybody too. We saw this with Bill Cosby, right? I mean, how many?
Oh, yeah.
There were about 13 women who had come forward with rape accusations against beloved comedian Bill Cosby, and it took a black male comedian making a very important joke about the situation before the world, really started to pay attention and really caught on to the fact that, hey, there might be a problem here. Now we're up to about 40 women in total who have now come forward and said that Bill Cosby either raped them or acted in an appropriate manner. Some were able to thankfully escape, but and you see that's also part of the whole Kurt Schilling conversation too. Women every day deal with that kind of crap on social media, that kind of being called a cunt, being called a bitch, being told to get back into the kitchen and make me a sandwich, that kind of stuff. Nobody pays any attention to that unless A, it happens to someone that they consider to be worthy, like, a Michelle Beadle or whatever, or B, a man like Kurt Schilling talks about it. It's just not a problem until it's, it's one of those situations. But it's the reality, being a woman, especially if you're a woman on social media talking about whatever, just a woman with an opinion, you're going to get that kind of reaction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, being involved in it, and I do a lot of fantasy football is really where I focus. And as you know, as somebody who obviously you regularly report on sports, being a woman when you're dealing in sports, you've had it, I'm sure you've had it happen to you more than a few times. I expect the inevitable random from some guy in a league I don't know sexting attempt. Which honestly, come on, man. It's football. I'm pretty sure there are sites for that on the internet. This is a football site. Why? Or the jokes about being a woman. A few years back, I did a draft where one of the drafters in the chat room afterwards asked if I was my boyfriend or my husband because I drafted so well.
Draft?
Yeah, because obviously as a woman, it is impossible for me to understand statistics or watch a player. It's like I'm not actually playing center. I'm picking out a player.
Your lady brains can't add two and two and get four, right?
Yeah, no, I used to drive a Mustang, and guys would say to me, "Wow, isn't that a car for you? A lot of car for you?" And I'm like, "I'm not carrying the car. how on earth would my gender affect the driving of a car? It's not like I have to pick it up.
My first car was a Mustang. Lisa, you're like my soul sister.
I know.
So
we have so much
I'm
in common.
We do. We really do. It's great and awesome and but a little strange. It's always great though to find your people, right?
Right. So but you are correct. It's an issue that I think is still pervasive. And then when you look at stuff like Bill Cosby, they're still blaming the victims, and there's always the she wants attention, or they have regret about what happened, and
or she's
I don't
just
think
here to meet guys. She's just here, the Clay Travis narrative. She's just here to be looked at and meet guys.
And I don't think I sometimes think that society. I mean, first of all, the false reporting rates are pretty low. They're actually statistically very low. And I don't think people really truly understand what a victim goes through when they actually have to go through this process, to the point where they had to write statutes to try and protect victims from being turned into the perpetrators in trials, because that's basically it really was. Were you wearing a short skirt? And the threats and the humiliation. I mean, to come forward when you're coming against a college or a professional athlete, you have to know that you're not getting your own daytime TV show. You're going to get 10,000 death threats is what you're signing up for. And unfortunately, people still think that these victims are there to get publicity. But who wants to sign up for the world hating on you for ruining their athlete?
Oh yeah, and I talked about this on one of my shows. It is interesting when when the common folk like me talk about harassment and what it's like to be a woman on social media, or just talk about issues in general versus versus a male, coming out and talking about talking about the reaction to Sarah Thomas or whatever. We, the rank and file, the ones who are actually out here in the trenches, who've been in the trenches doing the dirty work for years, we're just we're just the bitches who ruin everything. While a man talking about it is he's a revolutionary, he's a visionary, he's stepping up to the plate and supporting his sisters and all of that. The conversation is always interesting to me.
Yes, I mean it definitely is, and sometimes I think it just it takes it having to be so put out there to exactly what this violence is. And with Ray Rice, the change in tenor when that video came out and everybody really saw what I don't know sometimes what people think of it. And I think sometimes they think of like people pushing each other when they think of domestic violence. They don't really think of the true face of domestic violence. And seeing that punch and seeing that violence in the face, it made it to the point of, okay, maybe I need to back off that stance. That we should stay out of this, or I will say an unnamed sportscaster at one point had been complaining about the fine amount was a significant amount, and it was when everyone was talking about the fine, and then afterwards his stance changed when he saw that punch. And I think sometimes
video is changing the game without question. We've talked about that on this show here. Video is changing the game. It shows what it is like for a woman to take a punch. It shows what it's like for a woman to get raped. Although unfortunately in those situations, oftentimes the video is part of the violation. But the flip side to that unfortunate aspect is that these assholes who are actually filming a woman being raped are also preserving evidence of the act in order to for them to be convicted. So, video is definitely changing the game in ways, not just in violence against women, but in situations where cops are involved in shooting of unarmed citizens, primarily black males.
Oh yeah, no, that's I mean, if given a choice, I would opt for body cameras. I mean, not just for, and you know what? As much as they make arguments against it, I would think that both sides would want those cameras because it could be used as a defense in an internal affairs investigation as much as it could be used to film it. But the fact is, I imagine. I mean, we have some issues right now. We have some issues with that. We have some serious issues with violence right now, with the police violence. Obviously, the shooting this week was this week or last week?
Well, there's one this week too. There's one. I mean, it's like every day.
It's keeping track of all these, and I mean,
Walter Scott and then Eric Harris. Georgia's the latest one. Then there was one yesterday. Although I think that unfortunately that gentleman didn't die. You know, I mean, we're at the point now where it's thankfully this person didn't die. I mean, it's just incredible. Real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but real quick, we're going to talk some NBA with Jonas Pope. But I have to ask you, real quick, Hillary. Listen, I have to tell you guys, poor Lisa, she'll never come back. I sent Lisa the wrong outline. I do a production outline for every show, and I sent her the one from Monday. So poor Lisa prepared for Hillary. I have to ask her about what are your thoughts on the Hillary candidacy. She doesn't have much opposition. She will face opposition among the Republicans, though.
Right. I'm actually an independent. I'm non-party affiliated, and so when I look at this, mostly I want to go fetal when I see the candidates that are going to be running for president, and unfortunately a lot of times I think a lot of the populace right now feels like, really, I'm just voting against people. I'm not voting for people. I'm voting against people. And I would love to see anybody, be a serious candidate against Hillary. I don't know if she really can win. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, the email scandal. I expect I expect very little morally from my politicians. They're politicians. So for everyone to be like, well, aren't they taking the moral high ground? They're a politician. But I would love to see I would actually love to see something like a Russ Feingold, Elizabeth Warren ticket, where you see two guys.
Elizabeth Warren is very popular. She's but she has said repeatedly she's not running.
She doesn't want to run. Right. Yeah. And I don't think she wants to go through it. I mean, it's a heck of a, and that's part of what people need to consider when you're talking about presidential candidates. I mean, these are people who are willing to take on a gauntlet. So you have to wonder, that the personalities are going to be strong, and what's happening is going to be a question. But I would love to see somebody come through and reform financially what's been going on. And frankly, for as much blame as everyone likes to throw to each party, the destruction of the banking laws and everything that has led to where we are today started with Reagan, and every administration, regardless of which side of the fence they sat on, have been helping it along till now. And Elizabeth Warren at least is saying something. I think Russ Feingold brings sort of a ticket where he could. First of all, he's the only person when they did the Patriot Act in the Senate who didn't vote for it. It was 99-1, and he basically stood up and was like, has anybody read this? You don't want this. And he's the only person. I mean, because we sit there and we fight about our parties, but the Patriot Act's still there. Both parties are doing the same destruction. I would love to see these two come in and clean up. And I think Russ Feingold and Elizabeth Warren would make a great ticket that will never happen, because they would probably scare entirely too many people.
The money thing is huge, and it's a big deal, and you're right. I'm going to devote an entire show to that topic.
Oh, count me in.
As Lisa said, it's big, it's huge, and it casts a dirty shadow over American politics, and nothing's ever going to change until we fix that. We wanted to talk about draft narratives. We will talk about that with Patrick in our last segment. We're going to talk some NBA right now with Jonas Pope, so we're going to take a quick break. We got to set him up with some bumper music. We'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, welcome back. We're going to talk some NBA now with Jonas Pope. Jonas, are you with us?
I'm here once again, jamming to you guys give me the best bumper music ever. Whenever I call into the show.
You know, I take pride. I take pride, baby. And I wanted you to have some great music this morning. Thanks for joining us, by the way. I talked a little bit about the NBA playoffs with Tasha Hall on Monday. It's just crazy right now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this is when you want. This is the time of year when you want all the craziness to be going on. You know, right before the playoffs, the final stretch of the regular season. You want this kind of madness to kind of lead you into the postseason where everything's exciting. Every game is down to the wire. It seems like. So this is the perfect tune-up for the postseason.
This is the most exciting finish I can remember in a good while.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, coming down the stretch, just so many teams log jammed in so many areas, right around the same standings and final finishes. But yeah, it's exciting. And like I said, it's a perfect segue into the postseason.
Yeah, some teams have clinched and know which spot they're going to be in. Some teams have not. Give us a rundown of what's going on in the East and West conferences. Which games do you think are key right now?
I'm sorry to hear the last thing you said.
So which games do you think are key right now?
Definitely in the East Coast, you know, the Hawks they're number one, but still the Bulls are battling for a certain position, and the Raptors and the Wizards, they're all kind of log jam right there in that 3 through 5 spot. So these last two games they have remaining are definitely the ones you want to keep your eyes on to see how those guys kind of sort that thing out. In the West, it's just as crazy. You know, Golden State at the top spot. They've had it like that for a while. But right there in the middle, you got the Clippers and the Spurs and the Rockets and the Trailblazers all kind of trying to sort things out and figure out who's going to get that 2 through 5 spot, which are very crucial. And, you know, San Antonio is playing the Pelicans come down the stretch. They're trying to lock up the number 2 spot, or maybe even, well, I just say want the 2 spot, but they can go 2 or 3, depending on how they finish here.
Well, I think the Spurs are going to end up in that second spot. You guys know, though, I'm a Spurs fan. I freely admit it. We're going to talk about my boo, Timmy Duncan, here in a minute. You mentioned the Hawks. Kind of an interesting few days for them. What do the injuries mean, and how is that going to affect their playoffs?
Well, I've had a philosophy about the Hawks all year, and it's funny that I read Paul Pierce's comments. And he said the Hawks aren't a team that really scare you once you get in the playoffs. And I said that all year. Even, you know, back in the beginning of the year when they first started really establishing themselves and had the best record, I was like, no, the Hawks don't scare me. I just didn't see it. And now, with everything that's going on, I mean, I'm a Knicks fan. And my Knicks suck this year. And the Knicks beat them with a full-strength Hawks team got beaten by the Knicks. So I'm like, that right there tells you everything. It made me feel a lot better about what I've been saying about the Hawks all year. The Hawks, even before the injuries.
The Knicks beat the Spurs, too. The Knicks beat the Spurs, too.
And I hate the Knicks for that. It's so frustrating because at the end of the year, all you want them to do is lose before they have a better chance to get the number 1 pick or at least a top 4 pick. And then they start winning. And when it really doesn't matter, that's just a frustration of a Knicks fan. That's for a different segment, a different time, a different day. But
we definitely need to do that.
God, I can talk about the Knicks and their failures and how they let me down for years. I can talk about it all day. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, the Hawks, they aren't a team that all year they haven't scared me. And then the way they finished down the stretch, you just like, oh, you know, we really expected more out of them. And it reminds me of last year with the Pacers who fought all year to get the number 1 spot in the East, and they got it. And then they still didn't go to the NBA Finals. I just feel like the same thing would happen with the Hawks. They fought hard to get that number one spot. And if they play the Pacers or the Nets in the first round, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers, who just got Paul George back recently, could beat the Hawks. So, I mean, I'm not sold on the Hawks.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more later about whether or not the New York Police Department might be in a tad bit of trouble. But you mentioned Paul Pierce, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit. Paul Pierce dropped the mic on a lot of things. The Brooklyn Nets. Paul Pierce, that uncle that he's gotten older and he literally has zero F's to give.
Yeah, he kind of sounded like the cranky guy on Get Off My Yard.
Yeah, right?
He's that cranky old man now.
I loved it.
Do you think that I loved it too. Did you think that his comments were fair or unfair?
I loved it. I just think, like you said, Paul Pierce is, I mean, he doesn't have anything else to prove. He's won a championship.
Yeah.
Played in numerous All-Star games and playoff appearances, and everybody knows what he can do. And they don't call him the truth for no reason. So he spoke the truth when he sat down to do that interview. And
he did.
I just think he said what got off his chest. I mean, everything he said. I mean, he wasn't really bashing anyone. I don't think. I think he was just speaking. He was speaking the truth.
Yep.
Like I love what he said about Williams in New Jersey, that he thought he was an MVP type player until he started playing with him and just kind of saw like this kid, he really wasn't pushing himself. I mean, I didn't think anything was wrong with that comment. I love the insight he gave about those guys' relationship with Ray Allen in Boston, and then when Ray Allen bolted from Boston to Miami, you kind of saw it. Like when they played Miami, those guys didn't interact with Ray. They didn't give him a hug. They didn't shake his hand. So I love how he brought all of that to light. I mean, I think one problem I have with the NBA, a lot of guys they're buddy, and you see them shaking hands and laughing and smile on the court. I love those guys who don't give a darn about their competition. They just have to just destroy guys and just really just do their job. And Paul Pierce has really kind of simplified that by just telling the truth about what he feels about certain players and certain situations in the NBA. So I was all for it. I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. I'm sorry, guys. We've got storms here. I lost a little bit of connection, but I'm back. I love Paul Pierce. I loved what he had to say. I thought that he had some interesting things. He wasn't the only NBA player, though, to weigh in on some things. What did you think about Kobe? Kobe coming in and throwing some shade at the media over Shaq, but basically forgetting that he had made some of the same criticisms of Shaq back in the day.
Like you said in the in the tweet you sent me the other day, Kobe being Kobe, and I don't think anyone should be surprised of anything Kobe has to say. Kobe's always been that guy. He's not trying to make friends in his business. He's trying to make baskets. He's trying to make buckets and win championships. But he's going to say what needs to be said. I mean, I don't blame Kobe for coming out and speaking his mind on Shaq about the past, what happened, whatever. I'm all for it.
The Kobe-Shaq relationship was very interesting. What is your thought on it? What did you think? What did you think about it then, and what do you think about it now?
Then I thought it was kind of like a big brother, little brother type of thing. Kobe Shaq was the alpha male and the established superstar, and Kobe saw him as maybe a threat, and Kobe saw him maybe not a threat, but Kobe saw Shaq as a guy he's in the spot I want to be. I want to be the man. I want people to know that they can build this franchise relationship around me. You have two alpha males on the same team in the same locker room. Somebody has to go, and the Laker management decided to go with Kobe. I thought, whatever beef they had, I thought that it was in the past, Shaq's retired and Kobe's towards the end of his career, but obviously Kobe still has a lot of things on his mind that he wants to get off his chest and talk Shaq, and it doesn't surprise me at all.
Kobe's been very, very outspoken lately. He had his documentary, semi-documentary. Then he had these statements. Kobe has a very complicated legacy anyway. What do you think How do you think history is going to look back on Kobe?
I think history is going to look back on Kobe as probably, and this is strongly my opinion, that the second biggest competitor ever to play the game behind MJ. That's just my opinion, man. You can't take away his rings, you can't take away his MVPs, you can't take away his scoring championships. You know, I mean, you can talk about being a bad teammate or running coaches off or things like that, but you can't count out what the man did on the basketball court, his accomplishments, and then when you watch him play, his determination. He wasn't there. He's another guy. He wasn't out there to make friends. He was there to make buckets. He was out there just to destroy guys on a nightly basis. Is one of the best competitors I think we've seen. Like I said, since MJ.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of interesting to contrast Kobe with a LeBron James, who, at least as far as we can tell, you never really know what's going on behind the scenes, but at least as far as we can tell, LeBron does a better job of being that teammate that guys want to play with.
Definitely. On the surface, it looks like everybody loves LeBron. He has secret handshakes for everybody doing the start lineups. He's dancing with teammates. He's posting Instagram pictures and videos of all the guys hanging out and doing all that good stuff. So yeah,
he's great at social media. LeBron's great at social media.
He is. He's awesome at social media. But again, I mean, all that stuff I think is extra. At the end of the day, GMs and fans and coaches, they want results. They want championships. Now LeBron's gotten the championships, but Kobe's gotten the championships too. He's just going about it in a different way, on the court and maybe off the court. But at the end of the day, it's the same result. They got championships.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Kobe's complicated. Kobe has always been a complicated guy, and I think his legacy for that reason will be complicated. But since we talked about LeBron, I definitely want to get your thoughts on the NBA MVP race. It's very tight. It's basically a three-man race right now, though some people, including Deadspin, which everybody knows I love, made a case for LeBron James. What the Cavaliers have done, considering how they started out, is pretty amazing.
Well, I look at LeBron like this. I look at that like MJ. You could have given MJ the MVP every year he played in the league.
Every year.
Because he was clearly the best player.
He was that good. Mm-hmm.
He was that good. Yeah, he was clearly the best player every year. And it's the same thing with LeBron. You can give LeBron the MVP every single year and nobody really questions it because, he's head and shoulders the best player on the planet. But you can make, like I said, hand it to him every year if you want to. But I think these other three guys, Curry, especially Westbrook, and James Harden, they're making an argument, hey, look at us. It's not all about LeBron. We can play, too, and carry our teams. Now, like you said, from where the Cavaliers started to where they are now, that's a big push. But where they are now is kind of what we expected the entire year.
That's true.
What Westbrook is doing is just it's amazing. I can't even put into words the triple-doubles and the scoring numbers. Yeah. That's pretty darn impressive. And then what James Harden has done in Houston without Dwight Howard, that's he's doing his thing. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever thought Harden would be successful when he left Oklahoma City. He's just proven that he can carry a team. And then Curry's just so fun to watch. I
love Steph Curry. I love Steph Curry.
I was telling a friend last week, I don't watch a lot of NBA games, but when the Warriors play, I make an effort to watch.
Yeah, Steph Curry is. You're right. He's probably one of the most fun basketball players to watch. He's got a better team around him. You made a great point with Westbrook and Harden, who really are basically carrying their team. Should Steph Curry get docked in the MVP race because of that?
I don't think so. Shaq won MVPs with Kobe around him, and LeBron won it in Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and Jordan won it with Pippen, and so on and so on. I don't think he should be, I don't think it should be held against him. But I do tend to look at what those guys do who don't have another superstar playing alongside them. I mean, definitely not another superstar. I mean, Thompson's good, but he doesn't have another superstar along him. But, golly, I mean, especially in the West, with James Harden and Westbrook, playing against top-flight competition every night. Not that Curry is if he's in the West as well. But when you know that Westbrook is going to put up a certain amount of shots every night for them to win. You know that Harden has to get a certain amount of points every night for them to win, and they still do it despite defenses knowing that. That's pretty impressive.
It's very impressive. Who's your of the three, and we'll leave LeBron out of it just because between Harden, Curry, or Westbrook, who would you pick for MVP and why?
That's tough. I'm kind of glad I don't have a vote, really, but I think, you know, if you asked me that a couple months ago.
I know Lisa wants to say you'd pick James Harden, but just because of the beard.
Can we award points for facial hair? Because I think the beard wins. That is a great beard.
He does have a fantastic beard.
He has a manly beard. That beard should be the edge.
Yes, he has a beard that'll make a lot of parrots very jealous. But if you asked me a couple of months ago, I probably would have said Harden because I'm just a James Harden fan. I'm a fan of his game. The way he plays is so free flowing, and he just attacks. But this push that Russell Westbrook has made in the last few months, and not to mention, it started around the All-Star game. Westbrook had the All-Star game MVP. He's just been on a tear ever since.
He really has.
If you ask me to make a vote right now, I would probably say Westbrook. Just because he's been so consistent since the All-Star break.
All right. Well, no, I'm going to have to go Steph Curry for the reasons that, and look, I love Steph Curry. But you can't go wrong with either three of those. Chris Paul, I want to ask you about him. Chris Paul he's in that conversation. You don't see a lot of people talking about him. Why is Chris Paul so underrated?
You're exactly right. It seems like, there was a couple of years where it was Chris Paul, and now it's like his time has passed. I'm talking about Curry and Westbrook and Harden. And I don't know if you want to say Chris Paul is underrated, but I think by now many people probably expected more of him. They probably expected a couple of trips to the finals, especially since he's been in L.A. And I'm thinking maybe because he hasn't gotten that done, or maybe he has his numbers up, haven't really blown up like they thought they would. People have just kind of forgotten about him. But, earlier I was talking about competitors. I think Chris Paul's right there with Kobe as far as competitiveness on the basketball court. And he's still a pretty effective player, but I just think because he hasn't, that team has been talented ever since he's been in L.A., and I just think because he hasn't gotten into a finals, that people are just kind of like, okay, the time's passed. These new guys are kind of stepping to the forefront. Let's kind of, pay attention to them and see what they do.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's definitely one of the great competitors. And I think that he's underrated. I'm constantly, as I'm looking at NBA Twitter, wondering why he doesn't get more mention. Obviously, you can't discount what some of these other guys are doing, and they're fantastic, and their game is so great. But there's not a lot of talk about Chris Paul, and I just wonder why. I wonder why that is. But we're going to talk about young guys, and I definitely want to get your opinion. There's been Bo Ryan, the whole one and done. These young guys. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting NBA draft. But before we get there, Anthony Davis. I want to ask you, Jonas, about Anthony Davis. Is there any way he can push himself into this MVP conversation? It's such a shame. He's so young. He's 22, and what he is doing is amazing.
Not this year, I think it's pretty much set for the three guys that we mentioned for this year. But I think, he's like to say so young. I think next year he's got to be a guy who's going to be a front runner before the season even starts. Like you say, he's 22 years old. The numbers he puts up, he's a guy who he can win multiple MVPs before his career is over with. He just has the skill set. If they build that team up around him, he gets a couple of playoff appearances and maybe even like a Western Conference final every now and then. Yeah, he's a guy who could bring home 1, 2, maybe 3 MVP trophies before his career is over with.
Yeah, he's another guy that's fun to watch.
Yeah, he is fun to watch. I'll be the first to admit I did not think he would be that good when he got into the NBA, and he proved me wrong. He is worlds better than I thought he would be, and like I say, he's so fun to watch. And I expect him to win 2 or 3 MVPs before he hangs them up.
I agree. I hope that he does. Lisa, did you have something that you wanted to say?
No, I'm good on this one.
Okay. I don't want to leave you out. Jonas,
no,
we've got
don't
to
worry.
talk about this.
Lisa, if I'm going to talk,
like
I'll talk.
Well, please do.
You
Lisa's
can't
like
cut
me.
me up normally.
She's well, of course, that's the lawyer in you, right?
Oh yeah. Like, once I get something to say, I'm not going to shut up. But I'm going to let you guys pontificate on this one.
Well, if we have time, I definitely want to talk about my bae, Timmy Duncan. But one of the things that I wanted to get Jonas on to talk about was all the controversy over Kentucky and the Bo Ryan making his one and done. You know, the whole conversation about these guys. And let me give my disclosure. I do not think there should be age limits for these young kids entering professional sports. I am very much against the age limit in the National Football League. I don't have any problem with these guys only going to college for a year and then declaring for the NBA draft. Zero issues whatsoever. So Bo Ryan created a stink. There's been a lot of talk about it. Jonas, give us your thoughts on this whole one and done thing.
I'm with you on it. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I'm sure people have been using this example for years, but it's true. Baseball players can go make money out of high school. Tennis players, Olympic sports track guys, swimmers, they can go make money out of high school.
Junior hockey.
Right.
Junior hockey, they're trying to pay junior hockey players. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll tell you an example. I'll tell you an example I use, Jonas. We let our 18-year-olds put on a uniform and go fight for our country.
Yeah, too. I didn't want to get that heavy. But yeah, I agree. I agree. But, yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it at all. I just feel like...
If they've got the talent and a team wants to make them whatever selection in the draft, I'm all for it. Free market, isn't that what America is based on, the free market system?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I don't get it. I don't understand what his beef is. Maybe Bo Ryan and other coaches are mad because they're not getting these guys to come to Wisconsin and not winning championships, but I don't have a problem with it. Like you said, the NFL is different because physically an 18-year-old should be playing that sport with grown men and getting hit and all that kind of contact. Yeah. But
there might not be that many that could do it. Right. I agree with that.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone who could do it. But basketball is different. I think look at Kobe and Kevin Garnett and Amari Stoudemire. There's so many examples of guys who made the jump and it worked out for them. I would say there's more examples of guys who made the jump and it worked out than examples of guys who made the jump and it didn't work out for them. Yeah. So
and everybody else is going to be making money off of it. So, you know, these kids, they don't even have enough money to eat when they're in school on these scholarships, and they could go get out, make some money. It's. I mean, while they're in school, they're limited in what they can do. So I can't see why they shouldn't be able to go out and get paid. I mean, the coaches are going to make $1 gajillion. The schools are making $1 gajillion. Why can't the kids make $1 gajillion?
I mean, I agree. Like you said, coaches are signing $1 million contracts and getting endorsements getting checks from Nike, and schools are getting more recognition. And these guys, you know, they're the product. They're the cash cow. They're the one who feel this thing. You know, nobody's coming to watch Coach K coach or Roy coach. They're coming to watch his players on the floor.
That's
it's interesting.
True.
You know, they just came out. We're not going to talk about this, but I want to mention it. We are going to talk about it on Monday's show, and maybe even on Friday's show with Vashti on Game Over. They just released the numbers on how much money the college football playoff system made. Speaking of gazillion dollars, there's absolutely no reason why college football players cannot be paid when you look at those numbers, and but again, that's a topic for another conversation. Hey, Jonas, we want to talk a little bit about the NBA draft. A lot of big games, a lot of young guys declaring. Who do you like and who do you don't like?
Who do I like? Who's declaring early and who I don't like?
Yeah.
I like I like the entire Kentucky roster declaring early. I saw that coming.
Really? Like seven or eight guys.
Yeah, we all knew that was coming.
Why not?
That did not surprise me one bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Okafor, of course. I like Winslow was definitely a smart move. Even Tyus Jones, I don't think Tyus Jones' stock is going to get any higher than it is right now. I mean, he was the MOP of the NCAA, and he just won a championship. And his two main targets on the floor, Okafor and Winslow, also gone. Why not? I mean, I don't think his window. I mean, his feeling. He hit his feeling the moment he hit that 3-pointer against Wisconsin. So yeah, he did the right thing by going pro, in my opinion. The head scratchers. I think everybody's talking about J.P. Topito from North Carolina. Definitely been the biggest head scratcher so far of a kid who's leaving early.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to be the top draft selection? I mean, we don't know the order yet, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, but it's pretty much going to boil down to two players: either Karl Anthony Towns from Kentucky or Jahlil Okafor from Duke. It's going to boil down to those two guys with both 7-footers, both playing the post. I don't care what team has number one pick. 7-footers don't grow on trees. Anybody can use a nice pure center. If I had to pick, you talking about your boy Tim Duncan earlier, I would go with Okafor because he models his game after Duncan, and you just can't go wrong with a 7-footer with nice footwork. So if I'm going to number one, I'm going to Okafor. But you can't go wrong with Karl Anthony Towns either. But it's going to be one of those two guys who will get the number one pick.
Is that who you want your Knicks to pick? One of those guys?
Listen, we can't go wrong either way. Now I'm hoping we didn't screw ourselves out of a top 3 pick by winning. As crazy as that sounds, but
yeah, they won a game this week that they shouldn't have won in terms of the draft lottery.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? I wanted them to lose.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, but I mean, we slip to number 2 or number 3. Hopefully number 2. Hopefully we won't slip past number 2. So if whoever, Minnesota or Philadelphia, if they draft Karl Anthony Towns, okay, that's fine. We'll take Okafor. Or if they draft Okafor, we'll take Karl Anthony Towns. Let's just hope we don't have a Greg Oden, Kevin Durant, Michael Jordan, Sam Bowie situation here with something we're going to regret later whenever we make the pick. But I think if you're asking me as a Knicks fan, yes, I would rather have Jahlil Okafor, but you can't go wrong with either one of those guys.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see how all of that does shake out, and who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. I agree. Okafor could definitely, maybe he could be the next Mr. Fundamental.
Yep. Maybe I read a story on Okafor in Sports Illustrated. He said his dad started showing him Tim Duncan tapes, when he was a little kid, and you can't go wrong if you're going to study Tim Duncan growing up your whole life. And it's there, the footwork, it's a bank shot from about 15 feet out. The defense, he kind of looks like Tim Duncan if you look at him a little bit. So
a little,
yeah. Yeah. If you
he might dress a little bit better than my boo. He might dress a little bit better than my boo, Tim Duncan.
Yeah, that wouldn't take much.
It wouldn't. Shout out, Tim Duncan, still getting it done. He's 38, 39 years old. The Spurs are going to make the playoffs, of course. Looks like they're going to get that number 2 seed and go Spurs. So, Jonas, we jumped right into it. I didn't give you a chance to tell everybody who you are and where they can find you. So please do that now.
You can find me on Twitter at capital J, capital E, capital P, O-P-E, capital I, capital V. That's J.E. Pope IV. On Twitter, Jonas Pope IV. On Instagram, and who I am, I guess, like I told you in the last show, I'm kind of a free agent right now. I did some writing this year for Tar Heel Illustrated, and I did some writing recently for Carolina Blitz. And I've done some writing here in the spring for the News and Observer right here in Raleigh. So kind of dibble and dabble all over the place, trying to do a little bit of everything. But you can find me on social media and in a press box near you at any time this spring, this fall, next winter.
Well, thanks again for joining us. Great stuff. I hope that you'll come back soon, and we can talk about the NBA playoffs. And I know that you're that you follow college sports too. Maybe we'll talk some college football and all of that, because spring games are going on. It won't be too, August is just around the corner. It won't be that much longer.
Yeah, I was at a spring game this weekend at North Carolina State, so yeah, definitely it'll be here before you know it. I would love to come back when you guys talk about college football and the paid and how the athletes should be paid, because I have a lot to say about that, but it's up to you. Your call.
We'll book it. We'll mark that down. Book it. We're going to have that conversation. It's an important conversation, and we need to continue to have those conversations. Thanks again, Jonas. Have a very great day. Happy Wednesday.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. You guys have a good day.
You too. The college football playoffs produced, I forget how much, a lot of money. And when you look at what these college coaches are being paid, the argument that it's economically unfeasible to play these college athletes really starts to look silly.
It does, especially when you consider, I mean, these guys, first of all, they're not exactly enjoying college. They barely have time to breathe during their schedules. And they're not even, I mean, unless they've got money from their parents, unless they're getting money from immediate family members, they may not even be getting enough to eat when they're sitting on a ride to a college, and meanwhile the coach is in multi-million-dollar contracts, and the school is getting millions and millions of dollars, and the sponsors are making money, and everybody's making money except for the kids that are actually putting their necks out there. And yeah, they're getting an education, which is great. They're definitely that's an absolutely wonderful thing. But even to loosen up some of these NCAA rules, which are just out of control. I mean, some of the stuff that they do to these kids, that they get in trouble for. It takes it to the point of just being ridiculous at times when everybody else is making so much money off of them.
Yeah, it really does. We're going to get Patrick in here in a minute and talk some NFL drafts, talk some Dallas Cowboys. But before he gets in, we started the conversation about draft narratives, but we didn't really get too much of a chance to talk about it. You know, it's interesting when, as a woman, you're sitting here and you're watching the whole draft narrative, and this has been going on for years. It's certainly not isolated to this particular draft season. But one of the interesting things to me is the whole conversation surrounding the quarterbacks. You know, you've got, obviously the NFL draft has become this industry. You know, it's definitely an industry and a money-making industry. The NFL is in the business of making money, and I'm not knocking that by any means. But when we just had the news this week that about Lawrence Phillips, a former number 1 overall draft selection by the St. Louis Rams, who had issues in college, domestic violence issues in college, was drafted. Again, number 1, and then went on to, continue to have issues in the National Football League. Ended up in Canada playing football, overseas playing football, and he just never could get right. And then we had the Aaron Hernandez verdict. You know, he was another guy coming out of college that had so-called red flags, off the field issues. I think one of the things to me is, why don't more men care about these players who allegedly do terrible things to women? It just seems like they brush it over.
I genuinely don't think it's in the societal psyche right now to necessarily care. I think that any change in attitude is really going to be more monetarily driven than it is going to be morality driven. I think that the reason why we're even seeing a discussion of it now is because the NFL has realized, oh, hey, we have this entire other market, and just putting pink ribbons and pink shoes on the players isn't going to cut it. So now, to not antagonize this market and to try and sell to this market, we're going to go ahead and start saying that this matters. But I don't know that as a society, I mean, maybe it's the way it's processed, and like I said, maybe it's just patriarchal leanings, but it's an issue that isn't taken that seriously. And like I said, I don't know that it is now. as much as it's more of a question of economically it needs to be taken seriously because you're losing a potential gold mine in women, and the NFL really wants to market to women. They're like, hey, here's people we can sell our product to, but now we're going to have to crack down on these things. And I think at the end of the day, if they can get away with, and I don't even know if it's a question of men and women caring, because when you are a corporation, which the NFL essentially, I mean, these teams are you know, their goal is to make a profit, and you're profit driven, and not going on anything else but a bottom line, then sometimes the thing that makes the greatest bottom line isn't the right choice. I don't know if Greg Hardy is any different than, you know, putting out a car that you know is damaged and saying, hey, it costs less to pay off the families than it does for the money we're going to make. Well, hey, we're going to win Super Bowls, we're going to get champions, and as long as nobody notices, and as long as our legal teams, PR teams can do it, if we can make money off this person, if we can get those championships, which sells our product and gives us a win, does it really matter what the player does? And now we're seeing with social media, with the mass media, it's becoming harder and harder for teams to keep stuff under the rug. I mean, when you read about some of the old players in back of the day and the things that they would do, nowadays these guys wouldn't last a week in the league.
Jim Brown.
Part of that is,
let's just throw Jim Brown out there. Jim Brown, Jim Brown was a great football player, no question whatsoever. But dude has has had some issues, and he should be thankful that he did not play. And Joe Namath, you could name him too. You know, a lot of guys should be thankful that they didn't play during this current age where social media is so big. And I agree with you. I think that it does kind of go back to that patriarchal attitude. But it's also interesting, too, because I know that you're down in Florida. Ryan Tannehill is young quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk with Patrick about this, too. The whole conversation about the quarterbacks, to me, is fascinating, because you see draft analysts basically overlook, just completely gloss over the fact that Jameis Winston was accused of rape. There is a second rape victim who is going to testify for the first, second alleged rape victim who's going to testify for the first. And if you had been following the storyline, you knew that there was a possible second victim out there anyway. But you see that completely glossed over. He has been the consensus overall number one selection for a while. But then when you get to when you talk about when the conversation turns to Robert Griffin III and Ryan Tannehill, both guys who have options that their teams have to make a decision on, you know, the conversation is, well, maybe they're not worth that option, but you know, a guy with the off the field issues that Jameis Winston allegedly has, he's okay, but you know, Ryan Tannehill and RG3 are not. It just bothers me on a lot of different levels.
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically the bottom line doing the speaking, but at the same time, with some of these guys having the meltdowns that they're having when they bring them in, I think some of these teams at some point may say, hey, maybe we should step away from these guys. But they don't, and they haven't for years and years and years. I mean, remember the old Dallas locker rooms of the 80s? They
what
just had...
was the movie? Yeah, there was a book, and then it was made into a movie. What was it called? North Dallas 40. And that's, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Michael, I mean, that
was crazy. And at the end of the day, I just think that anytime you're going to put something where you have a bottom line, people are going to look at the bottom line. And as long as there's nobody that cares, or you are able to dismiss the victims like you are. I mean, in the case of college athletes, what happened in FSU is pretty common, which is who knows what the truth actually is, because any chance of getting to it is potentially going to be obfuscated. He could be innocent, he could be guilty, but what we do know is that genuinely there's going to be issues getting there that there wouldn't be in other cases, because this is your star quarterback. And you're going to protect your product, and that's. I mean, now we live in a world where we have PR companies, running the show for the schools, and lawyers, and an entire gaggles of people who come in when these situations happen, and to protect the school, to protect the players, and so with that, you're going to see, I think. A shift in a focus where they can distract. You can hold up and look, here's something shiny. Don't pay attention to the controversy. Let's just pay attention to the players. And it's a shame. I think Tannehill will stay in Miami. I genuinely think they're gonna stick with him right now. I mean, we haven't exactly had the greatest success in picking quarterbacks prior since Dan Marino. Dan
Marino.
I mean, they really want to go back and see if we could do that for another 15 years in a row. So it's I think Tannehill will stay, but Robert Griffin III is gonna potentially be out the door. And there's a kid who I don't know if he was ever really truly given a chance, because I don't know. I mean, the question is how much.
Robert.
Yeah, that kid. Part of it is he tries to be. Yeah, he tries to be the whole team, and he was in a tough coaching situation. He tries to be the whole team, and then he inevitably injures himself because you can't be a whole team, and he just tries to do too much. And maybe the right coach, maybe the right team, and he could really work out somewhere. But it might be best for him to end up somewhere else with a change of scenery and a change of coaches, and let the Redskins do whatever the Redskins are going to do. Thankfully, I don't have to root for the Redskins.
Yeah, we could throw E.J. Manuel into that too. He's also a young guy who a year behind. The Bills have to make a decision after this season whether they're going to pick up his option too. It's also, I think, symptomatic of a league that grinds young players up and spits them out.
That is true. Unfortunately, the nature of football is so physical, and some of these players coming in, and you guys had discussed earlier the difference between the NBA and the NFL. There is a difference being hit by a 19-year-old and being hit by a man. When you get hit by some of these linemen, you get hit by these players, and these kids are coming in, and now it seems like there's more of an expectation that you just come right out of college and be able to play your position and be starter caliber coming out. It feels like a change to me. Maybe somebody's going to say, no, it's always been that way, but to me, it used to be you'd go, you'd take a year or two, you'd learn your position, and then you would start. And now, these kids are 21 years old, getting tossed into the fire, 20 years old. I see listings of running backs be considering old at 23.
I know, it's
23,
crazy.
I was an idiot, and these kids at 23 could be considered old men. And
it's insane. Mm-hmm.
And I think the people who get the worst of it are the quarterbacks that come in as option quarterbacks, where they're gonna be a running quarterback and they're expected to use their legs because they're not getting that protection in the pocket. A lot of times they're getting drafted behind bad offensive lines, and they're just getting I hate to use the term, but they're getting killed back there. Yeah. I just think of that old Carr when he started for Texas back in the day. That kid never had a chance.
Never had a chance.
He was seeing ghosts for the rest of his time. His brother's doing great, but it seems like those quarterbacks when they come in, if they don't learn how to protect themselves, and figure out how to protect their bodies and at least be somewhat of a pocket passer, they just get crushed. The injuries, and they don't really develop better as a quarterback. I mean, obviously you see exceptions
Yeah.
like Andrew Luck, who's got a motor and
Right.
can throw, but without
And
that,
Russell Wilson.
Also another good one.
Russell Wilson. Both of those guys have an uncanny ability to
Right.
to move around in traffic and continue to make plays, and that's very important, and it has been very instrumental in their success. You know, a lot was made about the new rookie wage scale, how the new CBA was going to make things so much. It was heralded as an improvement and a success, but I don't know necessarily that it is in practice, because teams are forced to play, especially young quarterbacks. The days of Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre for 3 years are gone. That's not ever going to happen again, because teams have to make decisions much quicker now, and also, and I think that you know this too, Lisa, these young guys, these young quarterbacks are going to teams who've sucked pretty heavily, and probably have new coaching staffs who are looking for that next franchise quarterback, and they don't have much time either, because they're largely on a short leash.
Oh yes, no. I mean, as a tragically depressed Dolphins fan for life, I watched us go through the many quarterbacks before we got to Ryan Tannehill, and I remember the season leading up when our motto was "suck for luck." So it was. I mean, that was the and there's. I mean, and it's tough, because as a franchise, as a corporation, you want to be able to put something forward for your fans, especially when you're in depending where you're located, and your fans can be fickle at times. And I think most of these. I mean, it's one thing with running backs, where it's a little bit easier. Yes, they need to learn blocking, but you could put a running back in for a down or two, and it's a little bit easier. But with these skill positions of quarterback and some of these receivers, where they haven't had a time to learn a real route tree, but here, get out there and perform, and people are surprised when they fail to do so. But with having to be put on that spotlight that quickly, put on the stage that quickly, and made to perform, and then take the hits that they're taking, when they've probably never been hit as hard as they're going to get hit by some of those guys in the NFL, just coming out as rookies is a lot. And so to see players fall apart without that time.
Yeah, and plus learning playbooks. Did you have a chance to see the Julian Edelman interview when he was talking about his first year or so with the New England Patriots? He was trying to learn the playbook. He was studying his ass off, and but he was making mistakes, and Bill Belichick yelled at him after one particularly bad practice. Do you even study your playbook? And he was like, I'm studying so hard, but it's so complicated. There are so many things that go into whether or not a guy is successful or not, and it really is rather interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, you look like, especially when they're taking these raw kids coming out of these college systems where they weren't asked to do as much, and then they're beginning this NFL playbook, which are gigantic, and they're given routes and plays, things that they've never seen, timing they've never done, and you expect them to come out and learn this, or they're switching over to a system. It's a lot, especially when you think about you're putting it on the shoulders of a 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old to come in and learn things they've never seen, and learn timing they don't know, and this is something that you traditionally you expect third-year breakout for a wide receiver, and now we expect third-game breakout for a wide receiver. So maybe maybe it's the level of players. Some of the level of players is coming out so much that our expectations have grown higher, and the pressure on them to perform has become more. And more colleges are running more pro-style offenses too, but even with that, it's still, I mean, I can't imagine what it's got to be to sit down and see an NFL playbook and know you have to know everything in that.
What did you think about, since we're talking about the Dolphins a little bit, what did you think about the trade that sent Daniel Ellerbe to New Orleans and sent Kenny Stills to the Dolphins?
I optimistically hope that it improves things. I'm wearing my Tannehill jersey, but I'm wearing my Tannehill jersey, and I tried to go long for my garbage can, and I missed. So no, I'm sorry. He's working on it.
I thought that Ryan Tannehill made progress last year.
He has.
He definitely looked more comfortable.
Yes, and he's still learning. I mean, that's the thing is, I still have hope that. I mean, he's not. No, okay, he's not Andrew Luck, but he really does have the ability, I think, to be a franchise quarterback. He's got things to work on, and that's spot. He's got to work on some of that. But he can make progress. And he is making progress. I don't know. I hope that this works out great, and I hope that Kenny Stills goes for a gajillion yards and touchdowns galore. Just saying, it's not like I'm taking him in any early rounds of my fantasy draft. So I'm hopeful. But really, if Cameron stays healthy, that's where I think a lot of balls are going. I think that's the move. That really, I mean, I liked Clay, but I think that Jordan Cameron, if he can stay healthy, that's where the balls will be really going, and that's where you'll see the most improvement in passing, and the increase in catches will be there.
Well, they had to do something. I didn't mention this, but we should mention this. Mike Wallace had a very interesting tenure as a Miami Dolphin, and obviously they traded him to the Minnesota Vikings. How much fun was that to watch?
Terrible. And I own him in a league because I needed help. I spent all my money on running backs, and so I needed to just grab whatever receivers I could. But Mike Wallace, you get receivers like that are just problem. They just. I mean, I'm sure he had frustration in not being utilized, but obviously the issues with the last game and taking yourself out, and you have to imagine it's like Percy Harvin. What if they're hearing this?
Interview thing.
Yes.
The whole interview thing after the game. Oh my God.
And you have to, if you imagine this is what we're seeing, if this is your public face, what is going on in the locker room? Like what you have to imagine, especially. I mean, they said suffering Dolphins fan with all the things that we've had and all the issues we had in our locker room. We still can't seem to keep our locker room get it straight. It just always seems to be there's some kind of mess there. So
in all fairness, it does look like they are taking measures to make sure that narrative goes away. I hope so. I mean, when I read some of the stories of what they've gotten into, and know some of the stories that have not been reported on what they've gotten into, it's interesting to say the least of what happened in the past. But I'd like to see him. You just need a stronger locker room, I think, and obviously Mike Wallace. Just, good luck in Minnesota. I mean, for the purposes of fantasy, I hope he does fantastic because I have him. And maybe Teddy Bridgewater will make a nice match. I keep drafting Cordarrelle because I can't quit you, Cordarrelle.
Do we know who his secret mentor is yet? Has anybody figured out who that is? I don't know. I haven't looked it up.
It's so crazy.
If he can learn that route tree, he'd probably be great. Otherwise, I think he's just gonna. I have him too in a dynasty league, and if he can't get his routes down, he's probably just gonna end up being the next Ted Ginn.
Yeah, I'm buying heavily, by the way, into Teddy Bridgewater. You mentioned Teddy Bridgewater. I've drafted
love that kid.
him. Yeah, I've drafted him 3 or 4 times in these dynasty mocks.
Mhm. I was so upset. I'm doing a startup now, and I missed Teddy Bridgewater. I was grabbing it. I missed him by a round. I was so upset. I was like, that would have been great, but I think he's going to be a really nice player for Minnesota that they can also build a franchise around. I think he'll shake out okay if they can just get their offense in order. And I mean, considering they had Charles Johnson as their starting player last year, you got to figure if they're bringing in some talent, maybe they can really work it.
And Greg Jennings is gone now, and a lot of turnover in their wide receiver core.
Yes, they did flip it over, so you're gonna have to. I expect like the beginning of the season to not look great, which is probably when I'm gonna make some moves on Minnesota players. Is the beginning of the season as they're still getting in preseason, as they're shaking the dust off and learning the new playbooks and and getting the timing down with the new receivers. That's what I'm gonna do. The whole God, he looks terrible speech. Teddy Bridgewater looks terrible. You should trade him to me. I'll be really kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantasy football shenanigans are they're always fun. You mentioned on Twitter, I want to ask you about this. You're doing a startup IDP, aren't you?
I am doing a startup IDP, and it is my first time. I've just started learning in the last year or two.
I'm so proud of you.
IDP. Yes. It's actual true and incredibly embarrassing story when I started learning IDP I started reading articles on it, and when the very first time I started reading, I was like, why does every team have a Mike, Will, and Sam? Like, who are these guys? Why does everybody have it? And then I was like, I had no idea. I couldn't understand it because I kept talking about Sam. I'm like, who's Sam?
Who's Sam? Sam's not even in the league right now.
Right? I was so confused. And then I finally figured out they were the linebackers. But, I just started in the last couple of seasons doing IDP, and I'm doing my very first startup draft with a snake draft with IDP. And I couldn't help it. I had to go take J.J. Watt. I traded up and took J.J. Watt.
Where did you take
it was crazy.
him?
I took him in the
first.
Where
did you take
I traded 1.6.
Did you? Okay.
I traded up because I knew the guy in front of me was going to take him, and so I traded away and picked that I traded back for later. But and I was right because right after I picked it, that guy started complaining about ruining his draft plan and took a while to pick. So I guess he was. Yeah, no, but I was like, you know what? That's who I'm building my team around. So I got him, and because I was when you look at the scoring in the system, he's just so ridiculously dominant over any other player in the position. It's like taking Gronk, at this point, which was taken right after. I mean, Gronk was taken, I think, at 9 for the same reason. It's just, when you're that dominant in a position, you can just win that spot. So, but I've been having a lot of fun doing the draft. We've been going since Friday, and it's been a great time. Although there's, like I said, there's still a learning curve on playing. So I'm still there's still players where I'm like, somebody actually drafted a player who retired.
Oh yeah. Oh
yes.
So yeah. I've got. It's funny. I'm doing a bunch of fantasy mocks right now, and Chris Borland and Patrick Willis are both still in the system, and if you don't timely pick, you get awarded them, and then you have, it is really crazy. I'm doing some rookie IDP mocks. They're pretty interesting. I'm really enjoying that too. So I love playing in IDP leagues, and for those who aren't familiar, that's where you pick defensive players and don't pick team defenses. You pick guys like J.J. Watt, as Lisa mentioned, and that it's fun. I love fantasy football. Hoping to get in a league with Lisa really soon. Patrick wasn't able to make it this morning, but we still have plenty to talk about. Lisa, thanks again for joining me. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, you can find me mostly on Twitter. I'm at LeeDogLaw, LeeDogLaw. That's pretty much where I stalk around. I skulk and occasionally post sarcastic things.
Yeah, well, we're working on getting an all-woman fantasy mock going, and I hope that you'll participate with that. I think it'll be a lot of I think that it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks again for joining me. Shout out to
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, shout out to Jonas Pope for all the NBA knowledge that he dropped this morning. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sharona. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Sorry that Patrick couldn't join us this morning. We'll have to get Patrick back in here maybe next week and talk some Dallas Cowboys, some NFL draft. I definitely want to get his thoughts on what the fan reaction was to the Greg Hardy signing. Have a very pleasant Wednesday. You've been listening to Sharona Unfiltered. Catch me out Friday morning, Game Over with Vasti and Sharona. Catch me tonight on Going for Two with Zach and Sharona. That should be a fun show, and we'll be back next Monday.
Yeah, dedicated to all my hustlers. I'm full. This right here is automatic, man. Understand that. We gotta do what we gotta do to survive, man. From the boss. Yeah. Remix, baby.